I haven't heard a word from the SEC. And by the way, we're journalists. We're not law enforcement. There needs to be a strict church and state there. If they want to know things that we know, we put it in the newspaper and they can do what they want with it. I did find his statement today. First of all, the charges are amazing to me because it wasn't just like one or two of the tweets were false. It was like every single one that day had materially false information on it, which to me then his response, I think, is troubling in that it seems a little bit delusional. If you read the SEC complaint, almost all the evidence they cite for the fact that it was false came from their interview with Elon Musk. He's quoted all over in there, having told them, no, I never talked to anyone about it. Oh, I thought it would amuse my girlfriend if it was 420.
Those are his
Those are his words
okay.
in the complaint. So how could he now look at this complaint and say, oh, this is completely unfounded, when he is the source of almost all the evidence? And that's another reason why I think they were able to move so quickly, because they interviewed him. I'm sure they interviewed the directors. There are no facts in dispute here. So I don't see a defense here. I think he and his lawyers have got to get in there and start settlement talks now. And one of the biggest pieces of leverage they have is the willingness of Elon Musk to step aside. And that would almost inevitably be part of the settlement of this deal.
Step aside in what capacity? Could he still be at the company? Could he still be an officer but not CEO?
Typically, he'd be banned from being an officer or director of any public company for, I think Martha Stewart was out for 5 years or something like that. I would think it would be something in that neighborhood. And that might be part of it. But he could still be an advisor. He's still a very large shareholder. He could still be an important presence there. He just can't run the thing, and he can't be making unauthorized material public statements like this. I mean, it is amazing that maybe one reason they haven't charged Tesla is that nobody else there knew anything about this.
Right. Did you think that it seemed odd, and maybe it made it seem like the SEC would be less likely to come to a deal with Elon Musk? The fact that they said something to the effect of his status as a celebrity CEO and tech innovator doesn't exempt him from following the law. I thought that was that stood out. It was like underscored for me.
Absolutely, and I think, first of all, they needed to say that. From a law enforcement perspective, you get a celebrity defendant like this, it is incredibly valuable in sending a message to the rest of the world. Everyone is paying attention to this case. This is setting an example for every other CEO that they have any regulatory authority over, who is going to be watching this very carefully. So, yes, he is going to get intense scrutiny, and they want to make an example of him, given what appear to be the egregious facts. I mean, which again, to me, goes to this very important question, which they haven't addressed yet. Under what circumstances did he issue this tweet? We reported in the story he was apparently driving alone in his car to the airport, and he starts firing off a takeover bid for the company. Now, who does that? Even the SEC, we're all treating this like some kind of rational act. I don't think it is. There's something else going on here, and I'll be very interested to know what those things are, because that goes to the question: is should he stay, and in what capacity? You know, he appears to have smoked marijuana on a nationally televised blog not that long after all of this, when he knows he's under public scrutiny. I mean, a lot of investors, I think, are very concerned about it, which goes, again, should he leave? I know directors who want to find a way to force him to take a break.
Directors at the company?
Yes. And they have
Are they the independent directors, or are they also the
I don't want to get into exactly who, but I do know absolutely there are directors who want him to take a break. They feel he needs to take a break, and they've been looking for a face-saving way to do it. This may be their perfect opportunity.
I want to bring in Jim Cramer. Cramer alert here. Jim is chomping at the bit to talk about these charges against Elon Musk. Jim, what do you make of this whole situation?
I listened to my friend James B. Stewart just now, Melissa, and I keep coming back to the notion this man is erratic. He's unstable. He should not be right now running a public company. I think it's time for a medical leave of absence or some sort of leave of absence where they can figure out what has happened to him. You can't say and do the things he is doing and expect to be able to run a public company. Jim, when you saw him recently, I mean, you've interviewed him. You did that great New York Times piece. This is not a rational man.
Well, he himself, I did a whole column on this, he himself has alluded to whether he might be on the spectrum of bipolar or manic depression or something like that. And I don't think there should be any stigma about that. Many people have this. It's treatable. But if that's a factor here, I think it's time for it to be addressed. I agree with Jim on that.
Cramer, question for you. How does this, let's say Elon Musk steps aside, how does the stock trade? We're sort of all wondering what the reaction would be.
Well, the man always does get a pass, but at least he was there when he gets a pass. I have to tell you that this calls into question the thing that people most love about the stock, not that they love the car, obviously, is this man himself. And I think that if this man himself is going to have to step away if the SEC pursues this successfully, we'll make it so that this stock will finally get what the bears have been saying would happen all along. It'll take a real swoon.
So 12% decline does not reflect that potential outcome.
I think there's a lot of people, Jim knows this better than anyone, who are very unsophisticated about what the SEC can do and what the Justice Department can do. But, Jim, if they refer this to justice and justice prevails, do you really think that people who love this stock endlessly can love it as much as they do?
No, and you're absolutely right about that. I know plenty of investors who, they're not sophisticated investors. They love Elon. They love the story. They have total faith in it. And, Jim, you bring up a very good point about possible criminal charges. It's not clear yet that they're out of the woods on that. And again, when I read the SEC complaint, over and over again, they talk about how upset he was with the short sellers. I'm reading along every one of those references. I see motive, because what they have to allege and prove in a criminal case is that he had intent to manipulate the stock for an unacceptable purpose, which would include punishing the short sellers. And I noticed in the SEC charges, then, those facts don't really have anything to do with it. It's just about false statements. You don't need to say why you made the false statements. But that, over and over in that complaint, they talk about how upset he was with the short sellers. And to me, that is laying the groundwork for a motive in a potential criminal case.
Exactly right.
Jim was talking about some of the smaller investors, and granted they're important, but the institutional investors are probably the most important. These have been longtime shareholders of Tesla shares. They've traded in and out, but they've kept mainly their large positions, Jim. If you're at a Fidelity, if you're name the growth fund out there and you're holding on to Tesla shares, can you do that with the SEC charged for fraud and tell your investors, I'm going to stand by?
Melissa, I think it just got wishful. It wasn't wishful before this. It was, listen, you got you small-minded people who worry about things like the balance sheet and worry about whether they make the monthly numbers. You're just Lilliputian in thinking. Well, suddenly the guy who actually directs the company and is probably more the company than any other CEO I know, let's say he has to step aside. These people have to go answer to other people within their companies. And those other people are going to say, and it's be their elders, what are you smoking?
Jim,
Fair enough.
Thank you. It's great to get your analysis on this. I know you got to get ready for your show in just a few minutes. So we'll see you at the top of the hour on Mad Money.
Thank you, Melissa.
Good to see you.
Thanks, Jim.
Enjoy out there. Here on the desk.
So what
do you do?
Well, there's one really important thing we haven't talked about yet is in the complaint, they talked about investor relations at Tesla saying, yeah, we have a deal. The funding is secured as it can be, when they knew they didn't have anything. So we don't have a charge against the company yet, but that is another shoe that could drop, and I think investors will run for the hills when they see that.
I think the point we've made today, it's very important, and I know I've made it for a long time. Look, fundamentals on this company, I think, are challenging. And everyone else has said, okay, great, it's a big tech story, it's a $1 trillion idea. If you're removing that idea, what's going on? There was $1 trillion of risks before. I mean, but fundamentals, without this news, this company was a sell.
And next earnings are going to be at the end of October. You have plenty of time.
We do get deliveries in the first week of October.
So you're going to see
get a
deliveries
benchmark.
into that.
So let's say the deliveries are good. Cover off the ball, Pete. What do you think?
Which they may be, I mean, going into this whole thing. But I think the reality of it for me right now, Mel, is this is something. I mean, Tim's right. The fundamentals have never been there. But that wasn't what people were buying. They were buying Elon Musk. They were buying the story. They were buying the idea of what it is that was behind the curtain, so to speak. So I look at this in one other way, though. They lost Doug Field.
Yeah.
If there's somebody who could step in to be there, well, here's a guy who went from Apple to Tesla and back.
He just took on a CEO job at Lyft, though. He just
maybe so, but you know what? I think you got to go out and find somebody. He was in charge of manufacturing and production.
How about this? If they beat on deliveries, it still doesn't matter. The stock is still a short.
It doesn't matter.
At this point, there's too much fog.
It doesn't matter because, I mean, the only reason why they're beating on deliveries is because Elon Musk was sleeping in the factory. Who are you going to get to drive this thing like that, right? So I don't think the deliveries matter anymore. I have been one of those people that said you buy this because of Elon Musk. I now agree with Tim. The fundamentals are not there. Elon Musk is gone. There's nothing to this company. Well, maybe there's a little bit.
By the
to
way,
it,
Solar
but not
City,
nothing.
the fundamentals weren't there either, and he had to buy Solar City. I think if Solar City went bankrupt, Elon Musk's bloom would have been off the rose earlier.
Well,
What's the headline tomorrow?
The board has been looking for someone to come in and help him, and they have gotten it nowhere. I mean, nobody wants to go into this situation. And I still think until they clarify what the relationship would be with Elon, who in their right mind would want to go in?
I would imagine that it's the case that nobody wants to report to Elon Musk.
Yes, or to the board that he essentially has controlled. So until that is clarified, I can't imagine any highly talented, effective manager wanting to step into this mess.
Have you contacted Elon Musk to see if he'd do another interview? You never know. I mean, he did the interview before.
You never know. And by the way, I'm sad about this. I love the cars. I've driven the cars. This was a huge success story. It's so self-inflicted.
It's a great American technology story.
It's amazing.
He's a genius. It's upsetting to watch this transpire.
It's painful. And yet, at the same time, in all my years of reporting, I've never seen anything like that series of tweets. I mean, this wasn't just a kind of a mistake or an understandable error. This was crazy from top to bottom. I can't think of another takeover offer that was remotely like this in my decades of reporting.